Inside the emergency room, 22 doctors surrounded a young woman convulsing on the gurney. Monitors flashed red. Her pulse spiked, then dropped. She was dying, and no one knew why. Outside the glass, a 4-star general stood rigid, his voice cracking between rage and despair. 22 of you, and none of you can save her. No one answered. In the corner, a janitor holding a mop watched the monitor with eyes that had seen death before. His voice cut through the chaos, calm and certain. Stop. She doesn't need that drug. The room froze. The janitor's name was Elijah Mitchell, 35 years old, lean and weathered, with deep brown hands scarred from years of manual labor. Every morning before dawn, he woke in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Arlington, where the radiators clanged and the ceiling leaked when it rained. He would brush his teeth standing beside his 8-year-old daughter, Nyla, making silly faces in the mirror while helping her tie her tight curls into a ponytail. They ate scrambled eggs and toast at a small wooden table before he walked her 3 blocks to the bus stop, kissed her forehead, and caught the metro to National Military Hospital in Washington, D.C. No one at the hospital knew who he really was. No one knew that Elijah Mitchell had once been Captain Elijah Mitchell, a decorated combat medic who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan. As a black man in this space, a janitor in the same hallways he once dreamt of walking as a doctor, he kept his past hidden. No one knew he had saved entire units from nerve gas attacks using a unique combination of modern emergency medicine and traditional healing methods his grandmother had taught him growing up in the Appalachian Mountains. A wrongful accusation had stripped everything away 5 years ago: his medical license, his military rank, his marriage, his future. Now he mopped floors and emptied trash bins in the same hospital where he had once dreamed of practicing medicine. But he still watched the doctors work with trained eyes. He still remembered every lesson. He still carried the oath he had taken. His grandmother Ruth had raised him after his mother died when he was 6. She was what mountain people called a yarb woman, a folk healer who could read sickness in the color of skin, the shade of lips, the rhythm of breath. She taught him remedies passed down through generations, teas that calmed racing hearts, poultices that drew out infection, pressure points that restored the body's natural balance. When Elijah joined the army at 18 and trained as a combat medic, he learned to blend both worlds. In Afghanistan, when morphine supplies ran low, he used willow bark for pain. When IV equipment failed, he used acupressure to stabilize patients. That unique knowledge saved countless lives. It also destroyed his career. During his 3rd deployment in a village outside Kandahar, an explosion released toxic gas into the air. Among the casualties were Colonel Bradley Morrison, a senior officer with minor exposure, and 32 Afghan villagers, including 7 children who were dying. Military protocol was clear: treat American personnel first, prioritized by rank. But Elijah looked at those children gasping for air, their lips turning blue, their small bodies convulsing. He looked at Morrison, who was conscious and stable, and he made a choice that would haunt him for 5 years. He treated the civilians first. He saved 32 lives that day. Colonel Morrison, humiliated by being forced to wait 15 minutes for treatment, filed a formal complaint the moment they returned to base. Insubordination, dereliction of duty, failure to follow orders. The court-martial was swift and brutal. Elijah was dishonorably discharged, his medical credentials permanently revoked. His wife, Amara, unable to bear the shame and financial struggle, left when Nyla was 3 years old, signing away custody without a fight. Elijah never spoke ill of her to Nyla. He simply loved his daughter twice as hard and rebuilt a quiet life in the shadows, working nights and raising Nyla alone. As a black single dad, he valued this quiet life. Across the city in an elegant Virginia mansion, General Marcus Grant lived a very different kind of loneliness. At 60 years old, he was a decorated war hero with 4 stars on his uniform and a house full of silence. His wife, Catherine, had died of cancer 3 years earlier, and since then, Marcus had retreated into rigid military discipline. He woke at exactly 5 every morning, ran precisely 5 miles, then sat at his desk reviewing classified reports until nightfall. He rarely smiled or showed emotion. His only remaining softness was reserved entirely for his daughter Anna, a 28-year-old geneticist conducting groundbreaking research at Johns Hopkins. She was everything he had left in the world. He called her every Sunday at noon and never missed that call. October 15th arrived like any other Tuesday. Elijah clocked in for his night shift at the hospital, rolling his cleaning cart down the sterile hallways toward the surgical wing. The hospital was always quieter at night, just emergency staff and skeleton crews. He was emptying a trash bin near the ER entrance when the automatic doors suddenly burst open. Paramedics rushed in with a gurney, shouting medical codes. The trauma team assembled instantly. Elijah stepped back against the wall, staying out of the way as they wheeled the patient past him. He caught only a brief glimpse. A young woman, late 20s, dark hair, completely unconscious, her body in severe distress. Then he heard the name crackling over the hospital intercom system. Anna Grant, age 28, daughter of General Marcus Grant. Patient unresponsive, seizures began 40 minutes ago. Blood pressure dropping rapidly, pulse erratic, cause unknown. All available specialists report to ER immediately. Elijah's blood turned to ice. General Marcus Grant. That name was burned into his memory. Marcus Grant had been the commanding officer who presided over his court-martial 5 years ago, the man who had looked Elijah in the eyes and declared him unfit to serve, the man whose signature on discharge papers had ended his career and destroyed his life. And now that man's daughter was dying just 20 feet away. For a long moment, Elijah stood frozen against the cold wall, caught between bitter memories and present crisis. Every rational thought told him to walk away, to let the highly trained doctors handle it, to avoid any connection to the man who had ruined him. No one would blame him. No one even knew who he really was anymore. But then his training took over, stronger than bitterness. The oath he had taken didn't come with conditions. It didn't ask who deserved saving or who had wronged you. He moved closer to the ER entrance, carefully positioning his cleaning cart where he could see through the large observation window. Inside, organized chaos was rapidly descending into panic. Dr. Raymond Holt, the chief of emergency medicine, barked orders at residents and specialists. Neurologists huddled over tablets. Toxicologists reviewed potential exposures. Cardiologists monitored failing heart rhythms. Anna Grant lay on the gurney, her body jerking with violent seizures every few minutes. Foam appeared at the corners of her mouth. Her eyes had rolled back, unseeing. The monitors displayed cascading system failures that no one could explain. They tried anticonvulsants, no response. They tried benzodiazepines. Her seizures intensified. They consulted via video with specialists at Johns Hopkins and Mayo Clinic. No one had encountered this exact combination of symptoms. Every treatment seemed to make things worse. Outside the glass, General Marcus Grant arrived in full dress uniform, having rushed from an evening military gala. He stood with rigid military posture, shoulders back, jaw clenched, hands clasped behind his back. But his eyes betrayed everything. They were the desperate eyes of a father watching his only child die, knowing all his authority meant nothing here. "Give me answers," he demanded, his command voice steady but strained. 22 doctors in this room. Someone tell me what's killing my daughter." Dr. Holt turned, frustration evident. "General, we're doing everything possible. Her symptoms don't match any known syndrome. We're running every available test." Marcus's hands clenched into fists. "Then run them faster." From his corner position, Elijah watched the monitors with trained eyes. He observed vital signs, seizure patterns, medications being administered. Something was fundamentally wrong, not with Anna's condition, but with their treatment approach. A nurse hung a new IV bag. Clear liquid began dripping into Anna's veins. Elijah read the label from across the room. Normal saline, 0.9% sodium chloride. But Anna's symptoms told a different story. the slight bluish tint around her lips, the faint ammonia smell even from this distance, the specific rhythm of her muscle spasms. Elijah had seen this exact presentation before, not in a hospital, but in a desert camp where soldiers had drunk water contaminated by chemical runoff. Severe electrolyte imbalance, critical hyponatremia, dangerously low sodium, causing the brain to swell, and they were giving her normal saline, which wouldn't correct it fast enough. She needed hypertonic solution. They were treating the wrong problem, and it was going to kill her. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. When everyone's looking up, sometimes you need to look down. Elijah set down his mop and walked directly into the emergency room. Dr. Holt saw him first. "Excuse me, you can't be in here. This is a sterile environment." Elijah kept walking toward the IV stand, his voice calm and certain. "If you keep that drip running, her heart will stop in 3 minutes." The entire room went silent. Every head turned to stare at this janitor, making a definitive medical pronouncement. Dr. Holt's face flushed red. "Who the hell are you?" Elijah pointed at the cardiac monitor. "Someone who recognizes what he's seeing. Her sodium is critically low. That isotonic saline won't correct it fast enough. You need hypertonic solution, 3% concentration, and stop the calcium gluconate immediately. It's pushing her into arrhythmia." A young resident, Dr. Sarah Lynn, stepped closer. "How could you possibly know her sodium levels? The lab results aren't back yet." Elijah's voice remained steady. "Look at her fingernails. See the vertical ridging? Chronic electrolyte imbalance. Look at her muscle spasms. Those aren't neurological seizures. They're electrolyte-driven tetany. And if you pay attention, you can smell the ammonia on her breath. Her kidneys are struggling to maintain balance." Dr. Holt moved to physically block him. "This is insane. Security, remove this man immediately." But Dr. Lynn was already at the computer terminal, pulling up preliminary lab results. Her face went pale. "My God, he's right. Sodium is 78. Critical hyponatremia." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Outside the glass, Marcus Grant stepped forward, his eyes locked on the janitor. Something about the man seemed familiar. The way he stood, the confidence in his voice, the clinical precision. "Let him work," Marcus said quietly, but with unmistakable authority. Dr. Holt turned. "General, this man isn't a licensed physician." Marcus looked at his dying daughter, then at Elijah. "If he's wrong, I'll personally ensure he faces consequences, but right now, he's the only one who knows what's happening. Step aside." No one argued with a 4-star general. Elijah moved to the IV stand and disconnected the normal saline. "I need 3% hypertonic saline, 100 milliliters over 10 minutes. Too fast will cause brain damage." A nurse handed him the bag. He hung it with practiced efficiency, checked the drip rate, and connected it to Anna's line. Then he placed 2 fingers on her wrist, feeling for the pulse. Weak, thready, irregular. He moved his fingers to a specific point below her collarbone, applying steady, measured pressure. "What are you doing?" Dr. Lynn asked. "Vagal maneuver, stimulating the vagus nerve to help reset cardiac rhythm. It's an old technique, but effective with proper electrolyte correction." He pressed gently, counting silently. 30 seconds. Anna's violent seizures began to slow. 1 minute, her body relaxed slightly, the blue tint fading to pink. 90 seconds, her breathing deepened and became regular. 2 minutes, the monitor showed the chaotic rhythm stabilizing into steady sinus rhythm. Blood pressure began climbing toward normal. The transformation was visible to everyone. Dr. Holt stared in disbelief. Dr. Lynn had tears in her eyes. Elijah stepped back. "She needs continuous monitoring. Watch for overcorrection. Raising sodium too quickly can cause permanent brain damage." Dr. Holt found his voice. "What did you just do?" Elijah looked at him steadily. "I gave her body what it needed to heal itself." Marcus pressed his palm against the glass, eyes never leaving his daughter. She was breathing steadily. Color was returning. She was alive. He looked at the janitor. "How did you know?" Elijah met his gaze directly. Recognition flickered in Marcus's face. "Because I used to save lives, General Grant, before you decided I wasn't worthy." The words hung in the air. Marcus's face drained of color. The name Mitchell, Elijah Mitchell. The memory crashed into him. The court-martial, Kandahar. The medic who had chosen civilians over officers. Tonight that man had saved his daughter. Within minutes, hospital administration descended. Dr. Patricia Stevens, the chief medical officer, arrived with security personnel. She had a brief, heated conversation with Dr. Holt in the hallway, both glancing repeatedly at Elijah. He knew exactly what was coming. Dr. Stevens entered and approached him, her expression coldly professional. "Mr. Mitchell, you need to come with me, now." Elijah nodded calmly, glanced once more at Anna to confirm her vitals were stable, then followed her out. Marcus watched him go, something deep and unreadable crossing his face. They led Elijah to a small administrative office. Dr. Stevens sat behind the desk while two security officers positioned themselves by the door. "Mr. Mitchell, you practiced medicine without a license tonight. That's a felony. You physically touched a patient and administered treatment without authority." Elijah sat calmly, hands folded in his lap. "I saved her life." Dr. Stevens' jaw tightened. "That's not your determination to make. You're a janitor. You have no credentials, no legal right to touch a patient under any circumstances." Elijah said nothing. She was right about the law, even if wrong about everything else. "I'm suspending you immediately, pending investigation. Surrender your badge and leave the premises." Elijah removed his hospital ID and placed it on her desk. "If I hadn't intervened, she would be dead right now. And if she hadn't stabilized, you'd be facing criminal charges." Elijah stood at the door. He paused. "Your ER team is excellent, Dr. Stevens." They were approaching the right diagnosis. I just had the advantage of having seen this before. He walked out into the fluorescent hallway, footsteps echoing. He gathered his few belongings from his locker. Nyla's photo, his grandmother's old pocket watch, a worn medical textbook, and left the hospital. The story spread like wildfire. By morning, every staff member knew a janitor had diagnosed what 22 doctors missed, saved the general's daughter, and turned out to be a disgraced military medic. In the hospital cafeteria, a veteran nurse named Margaret Chen heard the gossip and felt something stir in her memory. Elijah Mitchell. She knew that name from somewhere. That afternoon, she went to the records office and started digging through old files. 2 hours later, she found it. 5 years ago, news had come through about a medic court-martialed for saving civilians over a ranking officer. The story had bothered her then. It bothered her more now. But there was something else in the file. Testimonies that had never made it into the official record. Statements from soldiers in Elijah's unit, all buried under bureaucratic weight. Margaret made copies of everything and brought them to General Grant's temporary office at the hospital, where he had remained close to his recovering daughter. She found him sitting in darkness, still in his uniform, looking like he hadn't slept. "General Grant," she said softly, "I think you need to see something." She handed him a thick folder. The truth about Elijah Mitchell. Marcus opened it slowly, as if afraid of what he might find inside. Inside were the original incident reports from Kandahar that Marcus had reviewed 5 years ago, but Margaret had added something that changed everything. Suppressed testimonies from soldiers who had served with Elijah. Corporal James Mitchell's statement, "Captain Mitchell was the best medic I ever served with. When that gas hit, Colonel Morrison was conscious and stable with minor exposure." The Afghan civilians, including 7 children, were dying. Mitchell made the only choice a real healer could make. Morrison was just angry. He had to wait 15 minutes. They destroyed Mitchell's career for it. Sergeant Anna Rodriguez. Elijah Mitchell saved my life twice. Once when an IED tore up my leg and we were pinned down. He stopped the bleeding with techniques I'd never seen. The second time when I got food poisoning. Every other medic said it was minor, but Mitchell recognized cholera and got me treated before it killed me. Losing him was a crime. Lieutenant David Park. Morrison ordered Mitchell to ignore the dying civilians. Ordered him. Mitchell refused and cited the Geneva Conventions. Morrison threatened court-martial. Right there, Mitchell said, "I became a medic to save lives, not to choose whose life matters more." There were 8 more testimonies, all telling the same story. A healer destroyed for choosing compassion over protocol. Marcus read every word, his hands beginning to shake. When he finished, he set the folder down and covered his face with both hands. Margaret watched him struggle. "Why wasn't this in the original court-martial record?" Marcus asked, his voice hollow. "Colonel Morrison had influence and powerful friends," Margaret said carefully. "These soldiers tried to testify on Captain Mitchell's behalf, but their statements were deemed irrelevant to the charge of insubordination." Marcus looked up at her. "I presided over that case. I signed the papers. I know, sir. I destroyed an innocent man's life because I was too lazy to dig deeper, too trusting of the official story." He stood abruptly. "Dear God, what have I done?" Margaret's voice was gentle. "You did what you were ordered to do with the information you had. The system failed Captain Mitchell." Marcus shook his head violently. "Don't make excuses for me. I had the authority to demand more evidence. I didn't, and a good man paid the price." He stopped pacing. "As a black man in this office, I know how easy it is to be overlooked. Do you know where Mitchell is now?" "Arlington, small apartment. He's raising his 8-year-old daughter alone. His wife left after the discharge." Each word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Wife gone, career destroyed, living in poverty, raising a child alone. All because Marcus had signed papers without asking enough questions. And last night, that same man had saved Anna, the only person Marcus had left in the world. The debt was impossible to repay. The shame was crushing. After Margaret left, Marcus sat alone in the dark for a very long time. He had spent 40 years building a career on honor and duty. But what good was honor built on another man's suffering? He thought about Anna lying in a hospital bed upstairs, alive because a janitor had more courage than 22 credentialed doctors. He thought about Elijah going home to explain to his daughter why he'd lost another job for doing the right thing. Finally, as dawn light filtered through the windows, Marcus made a decision. He would find Elijah Mitchell. He would face the man he had wronged, and he would do whatever it took to make things right. The next morning, Elijah woke to find 2 letters slid under his apartment door. One from the hospital, formally terminating his employment, another from the Virginia Medical Board notifying him of an investigation for practicing medicine without a license. He read them both while drinking instant coffee at his small kitchen table, then set them aside. He had expected this. Nyla shuffled out of her bedroom in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Morning, little bear." She climbed into his lap without a word, and he held her close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. This was what mattered. As a black single dad in his 30s, he carried the weight of job loss, but his priority was always his daughter. "Daddy, do you have to work tonight?" He kissed the top of her curly hair. "Actually, I'm going to be home for a while. How about we make pancakes?" Nyla's face lit up with chocolate chips. He smiled. "Of course." They spent the morning making a complete mess of their tiny kitchen, flour on the counters, batter on the floor. Nyla insisted on flipping the pancakes herself, sending one straight to the ceiling where it stuck, making them both dissolve into laughter. That afternoon, while Nyla was at school, Elijah's phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Dr. Sarah Lynn from National Military Hospital." Elijah sat up. "Is Anna okay?" Warmth filled her voice. "She's awake, stable, and she's asking about you." Relief washed through him. "That's good to hear." Dr. Lynn hesitated. "She wants to thank you in person, and there's someone else who wants to speak with you. I can't say more over the phone, but if you're willing, could you come to the hospital this evening? Just to the visitor entrance. I'll meet you there." Elijah agreed, curiosity overriding his reluctance to return to the place that had just fired him. That evening, after Nyla's bus dropped her off and he got her settled with homework and apple slices, he caught the metro back to D.C. At the hospital's visitor entrance, Dr. Lynn was waiting. She led him through quiet corridors to a private room on the 4th floor. She knocked once, opened the door, and gestured for him to enter. Inside, sitting in a chair beside the hospital bed, was General Marcus Grant. And in the bed, propped up with pillows, awake and pale, but very much alive, was Anna Grant. She looked at Elijah with intelligent, dark eyes that held both curiosity and profound gratitude. You're the one who saved me. Elijah stood awkwardly just inside the doorway, acutely aware that he shouldn't be there, that Marcus Grant was the last person he wanted to face. Anna smiled and gestured to a chair near her bed. "Please sit. I promise my father won't bite." Marcus said nothing, just watched Elijah with an intensity that was difficult to read. Elijah moved slowly into the room and sat, every muscle tense. Anna spoke first, her voice still weak but clear. "They told me what happened, how 22 doctors were treating me for the wrong thing, how you knew what they didn't, how you risked everything to help me even though you had every reason to walk away." She paused, emotion thickening her voice. "Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you." Elijah shook his head gently. "You had good doctors, Miss Grant. They would have figured it out." Anna smiled. "Maybe, but not in time. Time matters in medicine, doesn't it?" She glanced at her father, some silent communication passing between them. "I wanted to meet you, to see the man who saved my life, but my father wanted something more." Marcus Grant stood. He had changed from his uniform into civilian clothes, jeans, and a button-down shirt, which somehow made him seem more human, more vulnerable. He cleared his throat. The sound seemed loud in the quiet room. "Mr. Mitchell, Elijah, I owe you an apology that's 5 years overdue." Elijah tensed immediately. "General, you don't owe me a..." Marcus held up a hand. "Please let me say this. I need to say this." He took a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice carried genuine remorse. "I reviewed your case, the original files, and the testimonies that were suppressed. I know now what really happened in Kandahar. You weren't insubordinate. You were being human. You saved innocent lives, including children, because it was the right thing to do. And I punished you for it because I didn't ask the right questions. I took Colonel Morrison's word without investigating deeper. I destroyed your career, your reputation, your life." His voice cracked slightly. "And last night, you had every reason to let my daughter die. You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you, but you didn't. You saved her anyway. That's the measure of who you are, and it's a painful mirror showing me who I've been." Elijah sat silent, absorbing words he never thought he would hear. Marcus continued, "I can't give back 5 years. I can't undo the pain I caused you and your daughter, but I promise you this. I will spend whatever time I have left trying to make it right. I'm going to petition the Military Review Board to overturn your discharge. I'm going to testify before the medical board on your behalf. I'm going to do everything in my power to clear your name." Elijah finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "Why?" The question seemed to surprise Marcus. "Because it's the right thing. Because I was wrong." Elijah shook his head slowly. "You have your daughter back, General. You don't owe me anything beyond that." Marcus met his eyes directly. "I owe you everything." The two men looked at each other across the hospital room. Not forgiveness, not yet. That would take time, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Anna watched them both, then spoke gently. "When I was unconscious, I had these dreams. I dreamed I was drowning, sinking deeper into dark water where I couldn't breathe. And then someone reached down and pulled me out. In the dream, I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew he was a father. Someone who understood what it meant to save a life, because he knew what it meant to love a child more than anything." She looked at Elijah. "You have a daughter, don't you?" Elijah's face softened for the first time. "Yes, Nyla, she's 8. Anna smiled. "What's she like?" Elijah pulled out his phone and showed them his lock screen. Nyla at the park. Chocolate ice cream smeared on her face, gap-toothed smile, deep brown skin glowing, eyes full of pure joy. She's everything. She's the reason I get up every morning. The reason I kept going when everything else fell apart. Marcus looked at the photo for a long moment. "She's lucky to have you." Elijah's voice was fierce with protective love. "I'm the lucky one." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Anna spoke again. "I work in genetic research at Johns Hopkins. I study rare diseases. I became a scientist because I watched my mother die from cancer when I was 25. And I couldn't save her. I couldn't do anything but hold her hand and watch her fade." Her voice trembled. "So I understand what my father felt last night, watching me die and being powerless to stop it. And I understand what you did. You gave him back what he thought he'd lost. She reached out and took Elijah's hand. Maybe debts like that can be honored by making sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else, by changing a system that punishes people for choosing compassion over protocol. Over the following 3 days, Anna recovered steadily. Dr. Lynn kept Elijah updated by phone, telling him that Anna was asking about him, wanting to thank him properly. On the 4th day, Anna was discharged to recover at home. 1 week after the incident, Elijah received an unexpected call. It was Anna. "Hi, Elijah. I hope it's okay that I got your number from Dr. Lynn. I was wondering, would you and Nayla like to come to dinner at my father's house? Nothing formal, just the 4 of us. I'd really like to meet your daughter, and I think it would be good for all of us." Elijah hesitated, thinking about Nayla, about whether this was wise. But there was something genuine in Anna's voice, something that spoke of connection rather than obligation. "Let me talk to Nyla," he said finally. "If she's comfortable with it, then yes." Nyla, when he asked her, was curious and excited. "Is she the lady you saved, Daddy? Can I meet her, please?" And so the following Saturday, Elijah and Nyla found themselves standing at the door of Marcus Grant's Virginia mansion. The dinner was awkward at first. Marcus's house was massive and elegant, filled with military memorabilia and formal furniture. Nyla held tight to Elijah's dark brown hand, wide-eyed at the grandeur. But Anna greeted them at the door with a warm smile, immediately crouching down to Nyla's level. "You must be Nyla. I've heard so much about you. Your dad is pretty amazing." Nyla nodded seriously. "He's the best daddy in the whole world." Anna laughed. "I believe it. Come on, I want to show you something." She led Nyla to the living room where she had set up a small telescope. "Your dad told me you like science. Want to look at some stars later?" Nyla's face lit up, and just like that, the ice was broken. Marcus had attempted to cook dinner himself, his first time using the kitchen in months. The results were predictably chaotic. Burned chicken, oversalted vegetables, smoke pouring from the oven where he'd forgotten the rolls. Nyla found it hilarious. "Mr. General, sir, you're not very good at cooking." Marcus looked mortified, but Anna and Elijah both started laughing, and soon Marcus was laughing too. A sound that felt rusty and unfamiliar, but genuine. Elijah stepped in, salvaging what he could, teaching Marcus basic techniques, while Nyla supervised from her perch on the kitchen counter, offering commentary. Anna set the table, moving slowly but steadily. When they finally sat down to the somewhat salvaged meal, something shifted. They held hands around the table, Nyla's small hand in Marcus's large one, connecting them all. Marcus said a simple grace. "Thank you for second chances, for forgiveness we don't deserve, for bringing light back into this house." "Amen," Nyla said enthusiastically. Over dinner, they talked. Nyla told stories about school with animated gestures. Anna talked about her research, explaining complex genetics in ways that made Nyla's eyes light up with wonder. Elijah shared memories of his grandmother's healing wisdom. Marcus listened more than he spoke, soaking in the warmth of human connection he had denied himself for so long. After dinner, Anna showed Nyla the telescope, and they spent an hour looking at stars and planets while Anna explained constellations. Marcus and Elijah sat in the living room, the silence between them less tense now. "She's remarkable," Marcus said quietly, watching Nyla through the window. "You've done an incredible job raising her alone." Elijah's voice was soft. "As a black single dad, she's the reason I survived the last 5 years. When everything else was taken away, she was still there." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I meant what I said at the hospital. I'm going to make this right. I've already started the process with the Military Review Board. I have 10 soldiers willing to testify on your behalf. I found Morrison's deathbed confession. He admitted he lied. I'm going to clear your name, Elijah." Elijah looked at him, searching his face. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe me this much." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Because 5 years ago I made a decision that destroyed an innocent man's life. I have to live with that. But I don't have to let that injustice stand. And because," he paused, his voice growing thick, "because you saved my daughter when you had every reason to let her die. You showed me what honor really looks like. Real honor isn't about following orders blindly. It's about doing what's right, even when it costs you everything. From the other room, they heard Nyla's delighted squeal as she spotted Jupiter through the telescope, and Anna's warm laughter in response. "Listen to that," Marcus said quietly. 3 weeks ago, this house was a tomb. Now it has life in it again. You and Nyla did that. You gave me back my daughter and reminded me what actually matters. Over the following weeks, something unexpected grew. The dinners became regular. Every Saturday night, Nyla and Anna formed a bond that surprised everyone. Anna taught Nyla about science and genetics, patient with her endless questions. Nyla taught Anna about joy and spontaneity, things Anna had forgotten in her years of intense academic focus. Marcus and Elijah's relationship thawed slowly, built on small moments. Marcus teaching Nyla how to fold an American flag with military precision. Elijah showing Marcus how to make his grandmother's healing tea. Shared glances when Nyla said something particularly wise or funny. Nyla started calling Marcus Grandpa General, which made him tear up the first time he heard it. "Is that okay?" Nyla asked, worried she'd said something wrong. Marcus crouched down to her level, his voice thick with emotion. "It's more than okay. It's the greatest honor anyone's given me in years." 3 months after that night in the ER, the Military Review Board convened. Marcus had built an airtight case. Testimonies from every soldier who had served with Elijah, Morrison's deathbed confession, medical experts willing to testify about the validity of Elijah's treatment decisions. The hearing was held in a formal military tribunal. Elijah sat at the front with a JAG lawyer Marcus had personally hired. Nyla sat in the front row, holding Anna's hand, both dressed in their nicest clothes. Marcus stood at the podium in full dress uniform, but there was no arrogance in his bearing, just quiet determination and profound humility. "Members of the board," he began. 5 years ago, Captain Elijah Mitchell was dishonorably discharged from the United States Army for choosing to save 32 dying civilians over treating a ranking officer who was stable and could wait. I was the presiding officer. I signed those discharge papers, and I was completely, inexcusably wrong. He presented the evidence methodically. The suppressed testimonies, Morrison's confession, the truth about what had really happened in Kandahar. 3 months ago, Marcus continued, his voice breaking slightly, my daughter was dying. 22 doctors couldn't save her. And this man, working as a janitor because we had taken everything else from him, diagnosed her condition in minutes and saved her life. The man we dishonorably discharged is more honorable than many who still wear this uniform. The board deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Captain Elijah Mitchell, your dishonorable discharge is hereby overturned and expunged from all records. Your rank and commendations are fully restored. This board extends its formal apology for the grave injustice done to you. Nyla's joyful squeal broke the formal silence. Anna was crying. Marcus sat with his head bowed, overcome with emotion. You are offered reinstatement to active duty with full back pay or honorable discharge with veterans benefits and support for civilian medical licensing. Elijah stood, his voice steady. I choose honorable discharge with licensing support. I want to practice medicine where I'm needed most, among people who can't always access traditional health care. The room erupted in applause. In the hallway afterward, Marcus extended his hand to Elijah. I can never give back what I took, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it. Elijah looked at the offered hand for a long moment, then took it firmly. Thank you for having the courage to admit you were wrong. Not many people in your position would do that. Nyla threw her arms around Marcus's neck. Does this mean Daddy can be a doctor again? Marcus held her, tears streaming down his face. It means your daddy can help people the way he was always meant to. 1 year after that pivotal night, Elijah and Anna stood together at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Mitchell Grant Center for Integrative Medicine. The building was a renovated warehouse in a working-class D.C. neighborhood where quality health care was often out of reach. Inside, it had been transformed. bright examination rooms equipped with both modern technology and traditional herbal remedies, a community room for free health education, a laboratory for Anna's continued research, and outside a garden where medicinal plants grew. A crowd had gathered, veterans from Elijah's old unit, doctors from the hospital, including Dr. Sarah Lynn, who now worked at the center, patients already waiting for treatment. And in the front row, Marcus and Nyla beaming with pride. Elijah stepped to the microphone. 1 year ago, I was mopping hospital floors. Today, I'm standing in a clinic where those skills can help people. This center exists because Anna believed in combining research with compassion, because General Grant had the courage to make things right, and because my daughter taught me that doing the right thing is never wrong, even when it costs everything. Anna spoke next. A year ago, I was dying. I woke with a second chance given by a man who had every reason to let me die, but chose compassion. This center is my promise to honor that gift, to make sure what happened to Elijah never happens to anyone else. Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. I spent 40 years believing I understood honor. I was wrong. My daughter lived because a man I'd wronged chose to save her anyway, teaching me what real honor looks like. Nyla suddenly ran to the front and grabbed the microphone. My daddy is the best daddy in the whole world. And now other people get to have him help them too. Laughter rippled through the crowd as Elijah scooped her up. Anna cut the ribbon and the center was officially open. 2 years later, on the Friday evening, they gathered for their weekly family dinner at Elijah's apartment. Now, their tradition, Nyla, now 10, set the table while Marcus arrived with fresh bread, and Anna helped Elijah cook. As they sat down holding hands around the table, Nyla said, "Grace, thank you for family, for second chances, for love. Amen." After dinner, Nyla curled up between Anna and Marcus on the couch. Elijah watched them from his chair, thinking about the journey from broken to healed, from enemies to family, from bitterness to peace. "Dad," Nyla said sleepily, "are you happy?" Elijah looked at his found family, Anna, smiling. Marcus's rigid bearing softened into something warm and human. "Yeah, little bear, I'm really happy." Nyla nodded, satisfied. "Good, me too." The next morning, they all walked together to the center. Patients were already arriving. Veterans, immigrant families, elderly people, young parents. Every person was treated with dignity, offered care regardless of ability to pay. During a break, Elijah stood at the window overlooking the neighborhood. Anna joined him. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about that night in the ER, how scared I was, how I knew it would cost me my job, but how I couldn't walk away." Anna leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you didn't. As a black man who lost everything, me too, because everything good in my life now came from that one moment of choosing to do right, even when it was hard." Behind them, Marcus was teaching Nyla a proper bandaging technique, his voice patient with her endless questions. This was family, not perfect, not traditional, but real, built on forgiveness, second chances, and the daily choice to show up for each other. 2 years had passed since that October night, 2 years of healing and growing. The road ahead stretched bright before them, because sometimes the janitor holding a mop sees more clearly than 22 doctors with credentials. Real medicine begins not with degrees, but with the courage to act when action is needed most. That night when Elijah Mitchell said, "Stop," he didn't just save one life. He set in motion a healing that touched everyone in that room and everyone who would walk through the doors of the center that now bore his name. 22 doctors didn't fail. They just needed one voice brave enough to speak truth, one heart courageous enough to risk everything for a stranger, one man who remembered that before protocols and hierarchy, medicine is simply this: one human being refusing to let another human being die. That was Elijah Mitchell's gift, and in the end, it saved them all.